My parents always said family first, but immediately disowned me after I got married. Years later, they showed up at my house, asking for one thing that made me wish they'd asked for money instead. I grew up in what looked like the perfect upper-middle-class white family in suburban Michigan. My dad Robert inherited a chain of 3 successful auto parts stores from his father back in the early 90s. These weren't your typical AutoZone competitors. They specialized in classic car restoration parts and had contracts with several local restoration shops. Business was good, really good. My mom Linda was the stereotypical trophy wife who married into money. She didn't work a day in her life but spent her time organizing charity events for the country club, making sure everyone knew we drove luxury cars and planning elaborate vacations to show off on social media. She was the type who would post pictures of our family at expensive restaurants with captions like, "Blessed to have such a wonderful life, grateful family first." They were obsessed with image and status. Our house was this massive colonial in the best neighborhood, always perfectly landscaped. My mom would throw these elaborate dinner parties where she'd invite other wealthy families, and everything had to be perfect: the right cutlery, the right wine, the right conversations about the right topics. But here's the thing about my parents. They were racist as heck, just subtle about it. They'd smile and be polite to minorities in public, but behind closed doors, different story entirely. They'd lock their car doors driving through certain neighborhoods, make comments about those people bringing down property values, and my dad would go on rants about how immigrants were taking jobs from real Americans. I remember being maybe 12 years old and hearing my mom on the phone with her sister talking about how the new family down the street was nice enough, but you know how they are with maintaining their yards. The family was black and their yard looked identical to everyone else's. My little brother Jake was 4 years younger and absolutely bought into everything our parents believed. He was the golden child star quarterback in high school, dated the homecoming queen, blonde, rich white, of course got into the right fraternity at University of Michigan. He was being groomed to take over the family business and continue the legacy, as my dad called it. Me, I was always the disappointment. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't a total screw-up. I got decent grades, stayed out of trouble, but I just never fit their mold. I wasn't interested in sports, didn't care about impressing the country club crowd, and I sure as heck didn't share their views on race and social status. After high school, I went to Michigan State for mechanical engineering instead of U of M for business like they wanted. They were pissed about that choice for years. State school, my mom would say with disgust when people asked where I went to college, like I'd chosen to become a drug dealer or something. After graduation, I landed a job at a mid-sized manufacturing company as a design engineer. The pay was decent, started at $52,000 and worked my way up to about $67,000 by the time I was 26. Not amazing money, but enough to live comfortably in my own apartment and not depend on mommy and daddy. But my parents acted like I was flipping burgers. "When are you going to get a real career?" My mom would ask at family dinners. The Henderson son just made partner at his law firm. He's only 28 and already making $200,000 a year. The thing is, I was happy. I liked my job, I had good friends, and I was living my own life without having to worry about what the country club wives thought about everything I did. But that wasn't enough for them. Nothing was ever enough unless it came with prestige and bragging rights. So there I was, 26 years old, living in my own place and minding my own business when I met the woman who would change everything. Her name was Isabella, but everyone called her Bella. I met her at a professional development conference for young engineers in Detroit. She was presenting on sustainable manufacturing processes, and I swear this woman was the smartest person I'd ever met. She had her master's degree in environmental engineering, worked for a major consulting firm making $71,000 a year, and could talk circles around anyone in the room when it came to technical stuff. She was also absolutely gorgeous. Long dark hair, these incredible brown eyes, and a smile that made my brain stop working. Oh, and she was Mexican-American. Her grandparents had immigrated to Texas in the 1940s, but her family had been in the U.S. for 3 generations. Her dad, Miguel, was a project manager for a construction company. Her mom, Carmen, was a registered nurse at a children's hospital, hard-working middle-class people who had built a good life for their family. We started talking after her presentation, and I was immediately hooked. She was funny, ambitious, passionate about her work, and she seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. We exchanged numbers, and I asked her out for coffee the next weekend. That coffee date turned into dinner, which turned into a movie, which turned into talking until 3 a.m. in her car outside my apartment. I hadn't felt this way about anyone before, ever. We started dating seriously after about a month. She was everything I never knew I wanted in a partner. Smart as heck, but also down to earth. Ambitious, but also family-oriented. She could discuss complex engineering problems one minute and then laugh at stupid YouTube videos the next. The best part, she liked me for who I actually was. She didn't care that I drove a used Honda Civic instead of a BMW. She didn't care that I lived in a regular apartment instead of some fancy condo. She didn't try to change me or mold me into someone else's idea of success. After about 6 months of dating, I knew I was in love with her. Like head over heels, want to spend the rest of my life with her in love. The problem, I knew my family was going to absolutely lose their minds when they met her. I'd been dropping hints about this amazing girl I was dating, but I kept putting off introducing them. My mom would ask when she was going to meet my girlfriend, and I'd make excuses. Work was busy. Scheduling was difficult, maybe next month. Bella started asking questions too. When do I get to meet your family? She'd ask. You've met my parents 3 times already, but I haven't even seen a picture of yours. I kept making excuses because I knew what was coming. I'd grown up listening to my parents' casual racism my entire life. I knew exactly what they'd think about Bella, and it made me sick to my stomach. Before I brought Bella home, I tried to test the waters with my family. I'd mentioned casually that I was dating someone, maybe drop little details about her background to see how they'd react. Big mistake. One Sunday at family dinner, I mentioned that Bella spoke fluent Spanish in addition to English. My mom immediately perked up. Oh, is she foreign? She asked with that fake, interested tone she used when she was fishing for gossip. No, she was born in Houston, I said, but her family is Mexican-American. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. My dad looked up from his plate with this expression I'd seen before, the same one he got when he watched the news and saw stories about immigration. Well, my mom said carefully, I'm sure she's nice. Jake, who was 22 at the time and still living at home, chimed in with some about how I should be careful because you know how those families are with money. Like Bella was some kind of gold digger trying to trap me for my massive $67,000 salary. My dad didn't say much that day, but I could see the wheels turning. After dinner, he pulled me aside. Son, he said, you know, I'm not prejudiced, but you have to think about your future. What happens when you want to have kids? They're going to be confused about their identity. And frankly, what are people going to think? What people, I asked. Even though I knew exactly what people he was talking about. You know what I mean? The family has a reputation in this community. We have business relationships, social connections. This kind of thing reflects on all of us. I told him he was being ridiculous and that Bella was the best thing that had ever happened to me. He just shook his head like I was a naive kid who didn't understand how the real world worked. Just think about it, he said. That's all I'm asking. Think about whether this is really worth potentially damaging your future prospects. I left that conversation knowing that introducing Bella to my family was going to be a disaster. But I also knew I couldn't keep making excuses forever. She was starting to think I was ashamed of her, which couldn't have been further from the truth. After 8 months of dating, I finally worked up the courage to bring Bella home for Sunday dinner. I tried to prepare her for what we were walking into. But how do you tell the woman you love that your family are racist pieces of, without sounding like you're making excuses for them? I settled for telling her that my parents were traditional and might ask some awkward questions. What I should have said was, my parents are going to treat you like garbage because you're not white, and I'm sorry in advance for everything they're about to say. The moment we walked in the door, I could see the shock on my mom's face. She'd been expecting, well, I don't know what she'd been expecting, but it wasn't Bella. Her smile faltered for just a second before she put on her fake country club hostess act. You must be Isabella, she said, pronouncing every syllable very carefully like she was speaking to a child. It's so wonderful to finally meet you. My dad shook Bella's hand, but I could see him sizing her up, probably wondering if she was here legally, despite the fact that I'd already told them she was born in Houston. We sat down for dinner, and that's when the interrogation began. My mom started with the passive-aggressive questions disguised as friendly conversation. Your English is so good. You hardly have an accent at all. How long has your family been in America? What do your parents do for work? Bella handled it like a champ at first. She explained that she was born in Texas, that her dad worked in construction management, that her mom was a nurse. She was polite and patient, even when the questions got more and more inappropriate. Then my mom asked the question, "And what's your background, dear? You look so exotic." The way she said exotic made my blood boil. Like Bella was some kind of rare bird at the zoo instead of a successful engineer with a master's degree. Bella politely explained her Mexican heritage, talked about how proud she was of her family's history and traditions. My parents just sat there with these frozen smiles exchanging looks when they thought we weren't watching. The conversation got worse from there. My dad started asking about her family's legal status. And yes, he actually used those words. My mom wanted to know if Bella planned to keep her culture after we got married. With this tone, like maintaining cultural traditions was something shameful. Jake barely said a word the entire dinner, just sat there looking uncomfortable while his parents embarrassed our entire family. By the time we left, Bella was quiet, and I knew we were in for a difficult conversation. The drive back to Bella's apartment was silent. I kept glancing over at her, trying to read her expression, but she was just staring out the window. Finally, about halfway home, she spoke up. "Your parents hate me." I started to deny it, but she cut me off. "Don't. Just don't. I've dealt with this my whole life, and I know what it looks like. Your mom spent the entire dinner trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And your dad was 2 seconds away from asking to see my green card. She was right, and we both knew it. I apologized and tried to tell her that they'd come around, that they just needed time to get to know her. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it myself. The thing that bothers me most," Bella said, "isn't even how they treated me. It's that you let them. You sat there and let your mother call me exotic like I was some kind of zoo animal, and you didn't say a word. That hit me like a punch to the gut because she was absolutely right. I'd been so focused on trying to keep the peace that I'd thrown the woman I loved under the bus. I promised her it would never happen again." The next day, my mom called. "We need to talk," she said. In that tone that meant I was in deep. I drove over to their house that evening, and both parents were waiting in the living room like some kind of intervention. My dad was pacing. My mom was sitting on the edge of the couch with her hands folded, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. "We need to discuss this situation with Isabella," my dad started. "Her name is Bella," I said. "And what situation?" My mom jumped in with the whole "we're not racist," but speech that racists always give when they're about to say something incredibly racist. "She seems like a nice enough girl," my mom said. "But you have to think about your future. What about children? They'll be confused about their identity caught between two worlds. And honestly, what will people think?" "What people?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "You know what people," my dad said. "Our friends, the business community, everyone we know. We've worked hard to build a reputation in this town, and frankly, this kind of relationship reflects poorly on the entire family." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "This kind of relationship? You mean a relationship with someone I love?" My dad waved his hand dismissively. "Love fades. What matters is compatibility, shared values, similar backgrounds. You're setting yourself up for problems down the road." Then my mom really went off the deep end. "Think about the children," she said. "They won't fit in anywhere. Too Mexican for the white kids, too white for the Mexican kids. They'll be confused and angry, and they'll blame you for it. And what about holidays?" she continued. "Are we supposed to pretend to enjoy their food and music? Are you going to start speaking Spanish at family gatherings?" The racism was just pouring out of them now, all the polite pretense gone. "Here's the bottom line," my dad said. "You can date whoever you want, but don't expect us to pretend we're happy about it. And if you're serious about this girl, you need to think about whether she's really worth losing your family over." I stared at them both, trying to process what I was hearing. These were people who had raised me, who had told me my whole life that family was the most important thing in the world. And now they were giving me an ultimatum. Choose between the woman I loved and them. "You're really going to make me choose?" I asked. "We're not making you do anything," my mom said with fake tears starting to form. "We're just asking you to think about what's best for everyone involved." I stood up to leave. "I don't need to think about anything. Bella is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And if you can't accept that, then that's your problem, not mine." My mom started crying for real then. "How could you do this to us? What did we do to deserve this?" I looked at them both, these people who had shaped my entire childhood, and I realized I was seeing them clearly for the first time. "You want to know what you did to deserve this?" I said. "You raised me to believe that family was about love and acceptance. And then you showed me that you only meant love and acceptance for people who look like us." I walked out that day knowing that our relationship would never be the same. After that disaster, my relationship with my parents went from strained to practically non-existent. They'd call maybe once every few months, usually when they needed something, or when guilt got the better of them around holidays. Bella and I got engaged a year later. I proposed at the same conference where we'd met during the dinner reception. She said yes, and we started planning our wedding immediately. My parents didn't come to the engagement party. They claimed they had prior commitments even though I'd given them 2 months' notice. Jake showed up, but he spent most of the time looking uncomfortable and avoiding Bella's family. We got married 8 months later in a beautiful ceremony at a historic mansion outside Detroit. It was everything we dreamed of. About 150 people, amazing food dancing until midnight. Bella looked absolutely stunning, and I felt like the luckiest man alive. My parents didn't come to the wedding either. Same excuse, prior commitments. This time the commitment was apparently a weekend trip to Mackinac Island that they'd booked the same weekend as our wedding. The message was clear. Jake did come to the wedding, and he even walked Bella's younger sister down the aisle since her father was walking Bella. It was a small gesture, but it meant something to both of us. Maybe there was hope for him after all. The funny thing is, while my parents were busy disapproving of my life choices, things were going incredibly well for me. I'd gotten promoted twice at work and was now making $84,000 a year. Bella had also gotten a promotion and was making $78,000. We bought a nice house in a good neighborhood, took vacations to places we'd always wanted to see, and built a life we were genuinely proud of. We were happy. Really, truly happy in a way that had nothing to do with impressing other people or maintaining some image. Meanwhile, my parents' perfect world was starting to crack. The auto parts business was struggling as more people bought newer cars that didn't need the specialty restoration parts they sold. Online retailers were undercutting their prices, and my dad was too stubborn and set in his ways to adapt to the changing market. I heard through mutual friends that they'd had to lay off several employees and were having cash flow problems. My mom had to give up her weekly spa appointments and cut back on the elaborate dinner parties she loved to throw. But did they reach out for help or try to repair our relationship? Of course not. Too proud and too convinced that they were right. Jake had graduated from college and joined the family business, but he didn't have the vision or experience to turn things around. He was good at following orders, but innovation and strategic thinking weren't his strong suits. The writing was on the wall, but they refused to see it. About 3 years after our wedding, Jake married his college girlfriend, Ashley. She was exactly what you'd expect from my family's choice. Blonde, came from old money, had never worked a day in her life, but had strong opinions about people who did. They had a huge wedding that probably cost more than my parents could afford, but they had to keep up appearances. Ashley's family was even wealthier than ours, or at least wealthier than we used to be, and my parents were desperate to maintain their social standing. After the wedding, Jake and Ashley moved into a huge house that Ashley's daddy bought for them as a wedding gift. Jake was working at the family business making probably $65,000 a year, and Ashley was playing housewife and planning charity events with my mom. They were the golden couple in my parents' eyes. Everything Bella and I should have been. If only I hadn't been so selfish with my choice of wife. For the first 2 years of their marriage, everything seemed perfect for them. They took expensive vacations, drove matching luxury cars, and Ashley posted constantly on social media about their blessed life. But there was one thing missing, babies. My parents were obsessed with grandchildren. My mom would make comments constantly about how she couldn't wait to be a grandmother, how she'd already picked out names, how she was going to spoil her grandkids rotten. Ashley was equally obsessed. She'd been talking about having kids since she was a teenager, had their future children's names picked out, and had already decorated a nursery in their house. But months turned into a year, and a year turned into 2 years, and still no pregnancy announcement. I could tell it was starting to stress everyone out, though they tried to hide it. Ashley would make jokes about her broken biological clock, but you could see the desperation in her eyes. Jake started getting defensive whenever kids came up in conversation. My mom started making passive-aggressive comments about how some people just aren't meant to be parents and how everything happens for a reason. Real supportive stuff. Finally, after 3 years of trying, they went to see a fertility specialist. The testing process took months, and I could tell everyone was getting anxious waiting for answers. Then the results came back, and the news wasn't good. Jake's sperm count was severely low, like almost non-existent. The doctor explained that natural conception was basically impossible, and even IVF would be a long shot with his numbers. I actually felt genuinely sorry for them. Whatever else you could say about Jake and Ashley, I knew they wanted kids desperately. You could see how devastated they both were by the diagnosis. They decided to try IVF anyway, hoping for a miracle. Ashley's father paid for the treatments, 2 rounds that cost about $18,000 each. Both failed. The doctor finally sat them down and explained that their best chance of having a baby was using a sperm donor. Jake was apparently devastated by this news. His whole identity was wrapped up in being the perfect son who would continue the family legacy, And now, he couldn't even father children. That's when things got really interesting. I hadn't spoken to my family in months when I got a call from Jake. He sounded nervous, which was unusual for him. Jake had always been confident, even cocky about everything in his life. "Hey," he said, "I know things have been weird between you and Mom and Dad, but I need to talk to you about something important." I was curious despite myself. "What's up? Can we set up a video call? Me and Ashley want to discuss something with you. It's kind of a big deal." Red flags were going off in my head, but I agreed. We set up a call for the following Sunday evening. When I joined the call, I was surprised to see not just Jake and Ashley, but my parents too. And there was another woman I didn't recognize. Professional looking, probably in her 40s. "Thanks for joining us," Jake said, still sounding nervous. "This is Dr. Sarah Martinez. She's a fertility counselor who's been helping us through this process." The woman smiled and waved. "It's nice to meet you. Jake and Ashley have told me so much about you." I was immediately suspicious. Why would they need a counselor for a family conversation? "So, what's this about?" I asked. Jake and Ashley exchanged a look, and then Jake started talking. He explained about the fertility issues, the failed IVF attempts, the recommendation to use a sperm donor. I listened politely, genuinely feeling bad for them. Then Dr. Martinez started talking about family matching and genetic compatibility. She had charts and graphs showing success rates for different types of donors. One option that many families consider, she said, is using a known donor from within the family. It keeps the genetic lineage intact and ensures that everyone knows the medical history of the donor. I was starting to see where this was going, but I couldn't quite believe it. My mom jumped in at that point. "We've been thinking about this a lot," she said, "and we think it could be a wonderful solution for everyone involved." "What solution?" I asked, even though I was pretty sure I knew. Ashley started crying at this point. "We want you to be our sperm donor," she said through tears. "We want you to help us have a baby." The silence that followed was deafening. I just sat there staring at the screen, trying to process what I just heard. These people who had disowned me for marrying a Mexican woman were now asking me to father their grandchild. Dr. Martinez started talking about the beautiful symmetry of keeping everything in the family. My dad was nodding along, talking about how this would ensure the family gene stayed pure and strong. But the thing that really got me was when my mom started talking about what a blessing this would be for me. You'd finally have a chance to contribute something meaningful to the family legacy. She said, "Instead of wasting your life with that woman, you could help create the next generation of our family." That's when I lost it. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You people disowned me for marrying the woman I love. You refused to come to my wedding. You've treated my wife like garbage for years, and now you want me to donate sperm so you can have the grandchild you've always wanted." Ashley was sobbing harder now. "We're desperate," she said. "We've tried everything else." "And what about Bella?" I asked. "Is she invited to this family reunion, or are we still pretending she doesn't exist?" My parents exchanged another look. "Well," my mom said carefully, "she could certainly be involved as the baby's aunt." "Aunt?" I said. "Not aunt-in-law, but aunt. So now you're acknowledging that she's part of the family." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Dr. Martinez tried to jump in with some professional mediation, but I was done listening. "I need to think about this," I said. "This is a lot to process." They all started talking at once, trying to convince me, but I cut them off. I said I need to think about it. "I'll get back to you." I ended the call and sat there in stunned silence. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about the audacity of their request. The same people who had spent years telling me I was a disappointment, who had boycotted my wedding, who had treated my wife like she was beneath them, now wanted my DNA to save their precious family legacy. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized this might be an opportunity. An opportunity for some long overdue justice. I talked it over with Bella, and she was just as disgusted as I was. "They want to use you like a prize bull," she said. "Create their perfect white grandchild, and then go back to pretending we don't exist." "What if we don't let them?" I said. "What do you mean? What if we make them pay for what they've done to us?" We talked about it for hours, coming up with a plan that would give them exactly what they deserved. The next day, I called Jake back. "I've been thinking about your request," I said. "I'm not saying yes, but I'm not saying no either. I have some questions." He sounded relieved. "Of course, anything. First, what would my role be? Would I have any relationship with the child?" "Well, you'd be the uncle," he said. "You could be involved in that capacity." "And what about legal stuff? Would I have any parental rights?" "No, you'd sign away all rights. The baby would be legally ours and compensation." There was a pause. "Ashley's dad has offered to pay all medical expenses plus a $15,000 fee for your time and, contribution. $15,000. They thought they could buy me for $15,000. I need to discuss this with Bella, I said. Can you give me a week to think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need. Over the next week, they called me constantly. Text messages, voicemails, emails. The desperation was palpable. My mom even tried calling Bella directly, which was the first time she'd spoken to my wife in years. I know we've had our differences, she told Bella, but this could be a fresh start for all of us, a chance to bring the family back together. Bella was polite but non-committal. We're still discussing it, she said. Finally, I called Jake and asked for another family meeting. Same setup as before, video call with everyone present, including Dr. Martinez. I've made my decision, I said once everyone was on the call. You could see them all leaned forward, hanging on my every word. I'm willing to help, I said, but I have some conditions. Relief flooded their faces. Ashley was crying happy tears now. First, I said I want a public apology. You're going to post on Facebook apologizing to me and Bella for your behavior over the past few years? Their expressions started to change, but I wasn't done. Second, Bella and I are going to be included in all family events from now on. No more excluding us from holidays, birthdays, whatever. We're family, and you're going to treat us like family. My dad started to look uncomfortable, but he nodded. Third, the compensation is now $35,000, not $15,000, and I want half of it up front. Ashley's dad winced at that, but he nodded too. And fourth, I said, I want it in writing that I'll have regular contact with the child, not just as an uncle, but as someone who played a role in their creation. Dr. Martinez looked concerned about that last point, but everyone else was so desperate they were ready to agree to anything. Is that everything, Jake asked? Actually, no. There's one more thing. They all waited. I want you to admit that you were wrong about Bella, about our marriage, about everything. I want you to acknowledge that your behavior has been racist and hurtful, and that you're genuinely sorry. The silence stretched on for what felt like forever. Finally, my mom spoke up. If that's what it takes, she said quietly. Okay, I said. Let me talk to Bella about the details, and I'll get back to you with my final answer. After I ended the call, Bella and I looked at each other and started laughing. They had no idea what was coming. I let them stew for another week, checking in occasionally to make sure they were still interested. They were. In fact, they were getting more desperate by the day. Jake was calling every other day with updates on how excited they were, how grateful they were, how this was going to change everything for the family. Ashley sent me a long email about how she'd already started redecorating the nursery and how she couldn't wait for me to meet our baby. My mom posted a cryptic Facebook status about exciting family news and how sometimes God works in mysterious ways. She was already planning the baby shower in her head. Finally, I called for one last family meeting. I've made my final decision, I said once everyone was assembled on the video call. Their faces were glowing with anticipation. Ashley was practically bouncing in her chair. After a lot of thought and discussion with Bella, I said, I've decided that I'm willing to help you. Cheers erupted from their end of the call. Ashley was crying. Jake was grinning. My parents were hugging each other. But I continued, and the celebration stopped. I need to make sure you understand exactly what you're agreeing to. Of course, Jake said. Whatever you need. You're agreeing to publicly apologize for years of racist behavior toward my wife. Nods all around. You're agreeing to include us in all family activities going forward. More nods. You're agreeing to pay me $35,000 for my genetic material. Ashley's dad already has the money set aside, Ashley said. And you're agreeing to let me have a place in this family? Absolutely. My mom said you'll be the favorite uncle. I smiled. Great. I'm so glad we're all on the same page about this. They all smiled back, thinking they'd won. There's just one tiny little problem, I said. Their smiles faltered. I'm not actually going to do it. The silence was deafening. What? Ashley whispered. I'm not going to donate my seed. I'm not going to help you have a baby. I'm not going to contribute to your family legacy. The color drained from all of their faces. But you said, Jake started. I said I was willing to help you, and I am. I'm helping you learn a very important lesson about consequences. My mom found her voice first. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm dead serious. You see, I've spent the last few weeks thinking about what kind of people would disown their own son for marrying someone they consider beneath them, and then turn around and beg that same son for help when they need something. Ashley was sobbing now, but these weren't happy tears anymore. You had 6 years, I continued. 6 years to apologize for your behavior. 6 years to try to build a relationship with the woman I love. 6 years to show me that family actually meant something to you. My dad's face was turning red, but he couldn't say anything because they still needed me. But you didn't want a relationship with me or my wife. You wanted to pretend we didn't exist until you needed something from us. That's not fair. My mom said weakly, what's not fair is treating people like garbage and then expecting them to help you when it's convenient. What's not fair is being racist for years and then suddenly wanting to be family when you need my DNA. I could see the panic starting to set in. This was their last hope, and I was taking it away. Here's what's actually going to happen, I said, watching their faces crumble in real time. You're going to have to figure this out on your own. You're going to have to accept that your actions have consequences and that treating people like for years doesn't just get erased because you suddenly need something. Ashley was full on sobbing now. Please, she begged. We're desperate. We've tried everything else. Have you tried not being racist pieces of, I asked, because that might have opened up some other options for you. Jake tried to jump in. Come on, man. We're family. Family? I laughed. You mean like how we were family when you boycotted my wedding? Like how we were family when mom called my wife exotic like she was some kind of zoo animal? Like how we were family when dad questioned her immigration status even though she was born in Texas? Dr. Martinez tried to mediate. Perhaps we can find a compromise. There is no compromise, I said. You people spent years making it clear that I wasn't really part of this family unless I played by your rules and married the right kind of person. Well, congratulations. You got exactly what you wanted. I'm not part of your family, which means I don't owe you. My mom was crying now too. We can change. She said we can do better. Too little, too late. I said you had your chance to do better. Multiple chances. Actually, you chose to be awful instead. What do you want from us? My dad asked, his voice cracking. I don't want anything from you. That's the point. I've built a great life without you. I have a wife who loves me, a job I enjoy, friends who actually respect me. I don't need your approval or your money or your fake acceptance. Ashley was hyperventilating at this point. You're destroying our lives, she managed to say between sobs. No, I said. You destroyed your own lives when you decided that hating people based on their skin color was more important than treating your family with basic human decency. But we apologized, my mom said weakly. You apologized because you wanted something from me. That's not an apology. That's manipulation. I looked at each of their faces on the screen, devastated, desperate, broken, and I felt absolutely nothing. No guilt, no sympathy, no regret. You know what the really funny part is? I said. If you had just been decent human beings from the beginning, I might have actually considered helping you. If you had welcomed Bella into the family, if you had treated her with respect, if you had shown up to our wedding and made an effort to build a real relationship with us, we might be having a very different conversation right now. We can still do that, Jake said desperately. We can start over. Start over? I laughed. You think you can just erase 6 years of racist with a few crocodile tears? You think I'm going to risk my genetic material creating a child that you'll raise with the same backwards values that you tried to raise me with? The truth was hitting them now. They weren't just losing their last chance at having a biological grandchild. They were losing it because of their own actions.